Hello and welcome to my 3-spender ESO guide. I've recorded this several times now. I'm trying to make it as short as possible and without any audio issues because I had an SSD failure, so please forgive me if some of my settings are a little off and it's not coming out to a high enough quality and fidelity. Alright, that being said, this guide is for 3-spender ESO specifically. I want to put a warning label, red tape around this. You need to understand how Raid Captain and Mass Increase, as well as ESO 1 works for this build to be functioning and high DPS. Else, you're basically doing the same exact damage as a 5x3. That's just factual information. I will cover all the numerical data later, but that is like the very like, if you are just clicking on this video and you are curious about are my engravings good enough or whatever, or do I need a swap to play 3-spender or any of that kind of stuff, like, you don't have to. You just gain more damage by running Raid Captain for your non-spending skills. So the red tape segment is over. So let's just get into the fun stuff. So these are the gems that I utilize. I do utilize a high cooldown blast formation. This enables blast formation and flashy feint to basically share a very similar cooldown, allowing me to designate these as its own individual combo. And I will get onto why that is important later. But for now, just understand that's why you need a high cooldown gem. You can run it with full 7s. It's fine. It's kind of painful sometimes if you are good at keeping up DPS. Full 5s, it is very painful. I know this because I have an ult and he has full 5s. And in Legion raids, I have to swap over my gems because it's just painful for me. So if you don't have a level 9 cooldown gem and you happen to get one just by like fusing gems and you're like, oh man, it's a level 9 cooldown gem, what will I ever do with this? Blast formation, hello? It's like it's great for blast formation. I do have a damage gem for LTS. It's not required to be level 9. I just got one because, you know, unga bunga big number. The only other cooldown gem that is mandatory for 3-spender is to have SSB with a ideally level 7. You can do this with 1100 swiftness and a level 5 cooldown gem. Like I said, this character, full level 5s, uses the same like gem allocation, just different levels. So I will briefly explain why. There's two reasons. Number one, you want your rotation to be as tight as possible. And number two, you can self-maintain and like swap back and forth between SDK and SSB to maintain adrenaline. So right now I have 4 stacks and I have enough time to activate it. And then let's say Kungolanium has been doing like pheromone and like he's respawning. Okay, he spawned. You can then immediately go into bursting. Doing a burst, and you want your combo to come up as fast as possible. So that's why getting level 7, it does become a little bit quicker if you have level 10, but it's not required to have level 10 on SSB. It doesn't really change it that much. So this is how much stats I actually have in case people are wondering. So taking the level 7 SSB cooldown gem off, I cannot maintain adrenaline with SSB by itself. And then on top of that, my cooldowns are so long that I'm waiting for 2 whole seconds before I can burst again. If you're doing mechs and stuff, it's fine. It's not a huge deal. And you're basically like on target to at least have it in line with your LTS window. So that's fine. And as you can tell, my VTD is within cooldown window at all times as well. So I just want to make sure that that is as obvious as possible. Where is it? Alright, so I hope that explains all the cooldowns. The swiftness calculations are up next. Oh boy, as you can see, I'm not running Spirit Absorption, and I'm not able to cap my movement speed. Now, assuming you get Bracelet, and let's say you have 1200, you might look at that and go like, that's probably enough, because you get like 19 point something from SSB. No, it's not. It's not enough to cap. So 19.2 plus 120.6, you're 0.2 off. So the ideal target number, I believe it's 1211, if memory serves. Yep, 1211. 1210, you're screwed. You're screwed. You fucked up. Your build sucks. 1211 though. Smooth sailing. Raid captain, solo, fully capped. Now with your attack speed, because we know that it's 10% higher, because obviously mass increase lowers it by 10%. So that's just a given. Now we're almost capped by ourselves, which is Lightning Whisper and SSB for DPS cycle rotation for attack speed. Now, if you drink wine, which is a like per death reset type food, that'll basically cap you off. If you have a support or anyone in your party that also give attack speed buffs, that'll basically cap you off. If you utilize things like Flash Heat Fang, that'll help cap you off sometimes, but not reliably at all. You would basically have to like do awkward rotations and use Flashy Fang before your DPS cycle, and the only time that that's really applicable is if you're doing like a stagger check. So very briefly, stagger check damage that I would do would look like this. I would SSB to help gain meter, BTD to help gain meter, and then stagger check is passed, and then go right into DPS cycle. So if you don't have your support there, like Cuckoo Satan or something, just know that this is how much swiftness, as well as like your tripod value that you need to have in order to actually like be capped for raid captain. I hope that explains all the movement speed calculation stuff. If you still have questions, just know no support and not capped, movement speed is 120%. 45% of 120 is like not enough to make the difference between raid captain and ESO valid. Now, as long as you're using SSB, you're going to be sitting at, so for the average build, you're going to be at 138%. And that is with 1,100. So, you do gain around like 17.5% damage. So 17.5% damage plus the 8 from ESO is still going to be higher than just 18 from ESO by itself. So 5x3 is fine. You'll do enough damage. You just gain around 8.5% damage by using ESO level 1 and RC level 3. You can drop mass increase and run ESO level 3 instead, and then get adrenaline level 3. That's fine as well. The attack speed stuff is kind of just a quality of life. Like once you get the build up and running, it feels fine and playable. So very briefly, I will explain why my combo is STK, SSB, LTS, Tiger Emerge, and then VTD. So essentially, we're going to look at the movement speed. Now in a real raid environment this can be capped, even with 1100 swiftness. So I'm using SSB, doing damage. All of these skills are doing full damage because of Raid Captain, because real world scenario this can be 140% with food buff or with support around. Or with higher swiftness because you now have a bracelet. Okay. Or you have run rage and it's capped because you just use SDK. I don't care what the reasoning is, it's capped. You do this combo like this, blast formation. It's not capped. I'm at 118%. With support, this is 126 to 130%. So your blast formation, even if you're using it in a lightning whisper window, is not going to be doing full DPS because of these tripods. So in a more realistic scenario, what you would do is, hold on, bubble management is going to be next, but in realistic scenario what you do is you just use it outside of the lightning whisper window, and basically like all those hits pretty much just crit, so it's going to be doing more damage than using it in lightning whisper window and not having your movement speed capped. So I'd rather personally do the combo like so, and then come through and use this as a secondary combo. Fleshy Fang doesn't care about lightning whisper, so it's fine to use these skills as its own combo. It's going to give you the most amount of DPS potential. You just have to rely on blast formation being outside of lightning whisper and your crit rate being high enough. Now, me personally, I will gain 5% extra crit rate, so blast formation will be even higher, but it's basically like blast formation, like Deathblow uses blast formation outside of lightning whisper and it's fine. So the same logic is going to basically apply to 3-spender ESO as well. So finally, I want to cover bubble management. And this can be done at like 450 spec. You basically you're basically forced to run Welthrune on SSB, or if like you have like level 3 tripod or something like that. If you're not running mass increase, you can drop Lightning's Blessing and just run a different the Esoteric Extortion. You can run that instead. That's fine. But in short, this is how my bubble management goes down. So I have to SDK for the beginning rotation, else I won't have enough. And then after I do my full combo, as you can see, I started out with almost a full bubble, and then over time will eventually end up where I'm always at 2 bubbles after I use blast formation. So eventually it'll get there. It's just something that takes time. See, use blast formation and I got a bubble left over. It's just always going to end up in this cycle after like 3-4 rotations. Now, another thing to note about the bubble management is hypothetical scenario. You get a bracelet, let's say you're at 1620 spec and you're at like 1200 swiftness. This is when the build gets, well, let's just do the realistic number that you want to aim for, 1211. 1211, cat movement speed. Can't state that enough. So, let's just waste all our bubbles. So this is with the focus attack. So with focus attack, SSB and Lightning Whisper with 620 spec will always give you 2. and then you're always at 1. So you never need to use SDK. This is a big reason why people run spec Swift on ESO 3 spender and KR. You can run crit Swift if you're fine with the bubble management, just it does get easier to the point where you can just use SDK as mobility. So I hope this kind of explains everything. And as of course, if you are not comfortable with the meter generation, like let's say you have like 440 spec. Let me just generate some spec, some bubbles. Alright, so you go to do your combo, you got lower amount of spec. $440. Works just fine. You don't need, if you use 440 and you use the like vital point hit. I'm just using 440 as an example. You can drop this down all the way down to like 400. This is just for like the more budget options. So 400. You just got to do the combo slightly different. That's all it is. So if you ran focus attack on this tripod instead of the vital point hit, you'd basically be in this like perpetual cycle of like never having enough bubbles to maintain. So just real quickly. Just gives you so little. Like you barely have enough. You have to land like everything. So there's little minute details that you can kind of swap around. So if you don't have enough abundant resources on your SSB, or maybe you don't have a legendary wealth and you just have an epic and then a blue, these are all things that you can consider to make the build function. So I hope all of this explains everything in as good a detail as I can make it. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I always try to design and play builds to real raid environment, utilizing buff DPS cycles. If anything is longer than 6 seconds, it's not realistic DPS for most raid encounters, especially progging content. And outside of like some of the Vicus mechanics, some of the Volta mechanics, and like doing Cuckoo Seiron and doing Stagger into Mario, most Trixion tests don't actually carry over, or like Bingo and Mario and Cuckoo Seiron. So like there's so many different mechanics that like, yeah, you can Trixion parse, but for the rest of the raid, your Trixion parse is like non-existent. So that's why I played this build 3 spender, and I utilize the buffs and the cycles and the DPS skills in the specific order that I do, and that's just because it's reliable DPS and it's very consistent DPS. You'll never see me playing 4 spender ESO unless they change ESO engraving in KR, which is definitely a possibility. So buy ESO engraving books anyways, because they don't like engraving books being level 1. They've already addressed it with a few classes in the past, and I feel like they're going to continue doing that. Alright, that's it for me. Good luck in Belshazzar, and see you in game if you play on NA West. Bye.